What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Pick a Card, brought to you by J&J Toy Giants. I am your host, JD. Now, this is an actual very nostalgic episode of the J&J Toy Giants Pick a Card series because I kind of got a gift from a brother of mine. He also is part of the podcast that I do that's called Sean, Matt, and JD Save the World. Be sure to look out for that on Spotify and Anchor FM. I will leave a link to the podcast on the description of this video. But Sean Trekkie, he also is a part of them wrestling guys. Be sure to check them out as well on YouTube. They go over all of wrestling, WWE, AEW a little bit, even though I don't like it, New Japan. And he also does it with my other co-host of Sean, Matt, and JD Save the World, Matt Kettner, along with Sean's son Charlie. So be sure to check them out. And I will also leave a link to their YouTube channel as well. But long story long, he gave me about 8 packs or so of the 1990 WWF classic trading cards that was from, I believe it was from Topps. Let me verify. No, actually they were the actual Titan Sports, which was the parent company of WWF at the time. It was before they actually got an actual contract with Topps. So these are the cards that I'm going to be going over with you today. Now I had to separate them all because they were all open, so I just wanted to make sure that I didn't get any doubles for the very first package that I opened or went over with you. So we got a few cards, and for those of you who actually been wrestling fans either when you were a kid or now, you definitely are going to know who these guys are. But if in the event that you don't, I will go over briefly who they are, whether they were a heel or a babyface, which means a bad guy or a good guy in the wrestling business. And I will also include a very historic match that they've been in. So you can either YouTube it or go onto the WWE network and find out, and watch that match, because I'm a very avid wrestling fan. You can tell in the back over here that I have wrestling figures and I collect the Funko Pops. So it's very, very exciting for me. So I just wanted to kind of let you set the tone, so to speak. So the very first card, I wanted to start it off with a bang, people. Okay? This guy transcended the world of professional wrestling. If you don't even know who WWF is or WWE, you know who this guy is, because he is an icon in the world of pop culture. I'm talking about none other than Hulk, the immortal Hulk Hogan. Now, what matches should I be able to recommend that you watch? I mean, he was the babyface, which is the good guy, the ultimate babyface, until 1996 when he actually turned heel and became Hollywood Hulk Hogan in 1996 when he went to WCW. So, if I had to choose any match for you to watch that was the most, that would, that gave you all the emotions, excitement, drama, action, it would be the match at the main event of WrestleMania 3 against Andre the Giant in the Pontiac Silverdome. Definitely one of the biggest matches he's ever been in. Now, if I were to recommend my personal favorite, it would have to be a tie between him versus the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6 and him versus Hulk Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage at WrestleMania 5. So either one of those, definitely check those out. Now, this next guy I'm going to bring up, he is very instrumental in the world of professional wrestling, because not only was he an actual wrestler, but he then became the kind of guy what they would call an enhancement talent, where they would get a brand new guy to come in and would make him look good, to when they wanted to show how good the guy was. And I'm talking about none other than the Brooklyn Brawler. There you go. Always used to wear New York Yankees shirts. He used to always have a cigar with him. He had like a little Kango, New York City cab driver hat. But I mean, they were gimmicks back then. They always used to have some type of like a gimmick or not necessarily quote unquote a stereotype, but it was a gimmick. Like if you were back in the world of wrestling in the 80s and the 90s, you were, with WWF, you were a gimmick. You were like a garbage man. You were, plumber or anything like that. They always had a gimmick, or a clown. So that's what was his gimmick, is he always had that, Brooklyn guy who was stereotypical of a guy from Brooklyn. Now the next guy is, not only was he a wrestler, but also became one of the most famous referees. And I'm talking about none other than beautiful Dani Davis. Now, Dani Davis, you can see here, and he is reprimanding Haku, who is also the wrestler in that picture as well. Dani Davis actually became part of, there was a series of WWE figures that they were putting out, where if you collected a Delete series, you would get a piece of Dani Davis's body, and if you get all of the figures, you could be able to create Dani Davis as a figure, as a referee. So that was I actually haven't gotten any of those yet, but I am, those are on my list of figures that I want to collect. This guy started off as a heel bad guy and then became one of the most celebrated good guys as well. And again, I'm going back to what I said earlier, that you were a gimmick back then. You were a plumber, or, garbage man, or whatever. This guy was actually a former correctional officer in Cobb County, Georgia. I'm talking about the Big Boss Man. There you go. He is unfortunately no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, but man, was he was a tough dude. Like he knew his way around the ring. He used to actually be before he became to WWF. He went by the name of Big Bubba in the NWA, which became the WCW. And the next one, and he was always a heel, never a babyface, and had a great body. From Minnesota, I'm talking about ravishing Rick Rude. This dude was a really good character. Now, I remember watching him on WWF Superstars a lot, and his thing where like he would always like show off his body, he would wear a robe to the ring. And he always says, to the guys out there, shut your mouths while I take my robe off and give the ladies a good show so they could see all his muscles and everything like that. And sometimes he would actually pick a lovely young lady out of the crowd and kiss her. So that was a really good thing that he used to do. Now, this guy, also, if you know anything about professional wrestling, anybody who knows anything knew who this guy was. From parts unknown, I'm talking about the Ultimate Warrior. And this was right around WrestleMania 4, I believe. This is when this picture was taken. And this guy was really... A lot of people were split, because he was also just as famous and popular as Hulk Hogan. And so they was like, either you were with Ultimate Warrior, or you were, a Hulkamaniac, or you were Warrior. He was always say, my Warriors. And so if either you were a Hulkamaniac or a Warrior, so it was always split. Now, going back real quick, not to get sidetracked, but if going back to Big Boss Man, if you wanted to see a match with that, I would recommend for him SummerSlam in Madison Square Garden. I believe it was 1990. I got to double check, and I'll put it in the description. Him versus the Mountie was a jailbird match, and whoever lost that match had to spend one night in the New York City jail. Ravishing Rick Rude, I would definitely recommend. There were so many. He was a great wrestler. The one that comes to mind right off the bat, speaking of the Ultimate Warrior, him versus the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental title match at WrestleMania 5. Check that out as well. Now, I also did mention that there was a match between Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. That was one of my personal favorites. But if I had to pick another match with him, other than the one with Hulk Hogan, I'd check that out first. The match that Ultimate Warrior had with Andre the Giant, they weren't that pretty to look at, but it was a very exciting time. Or, Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan. Those are the only ones that come to mind that were like standout. There was a match that he did also in an earlier SummerSlam of Ultimate Warrior against the Honky Tonk Man, but that was like real quick. So the next one I'm going to bring out, he actually was also part of a tag team, number one, so I wanted to preface that, but also was a heel, then became a babyface. And this tag team, a lot of people were saying they were kind of like a gimmick or a copycat of the Legion of Doom, who are these guys in the red right over here. I'm talking about Axe from Demolition. And his partner, his name is Smash. I think I have a card for him here. But if I would have to recommend a match for him, I would say Demolition versus... let's see here. I believe there was Demolition versus the Barbarians. Those were, I don't remember exactly. If I believe it was at a WrestleMania, but check them out on YouTube. The Demolition versus the Barbarians. This guy also was very instrumental in the world of professional wrestling. His gimmick was he used to actually bring an animal with him to the ring. He was never a guy that used to, yell and scream, "I'm gonna get you." He was very soft-spoken, very devious. When you would look in his eyes, you could tell. And I'm talking about Jake the Snake Roberts. He was a very, very instrumental wrestler in my childhood. Brought an actual 24-inch python, like a boa. But it was, I think that he called him a python. The name is Damien. And he had other snakes after that. But if I would recommend a match between him and the $1 Million Man. So you just look up Jake the Snake Roberts versus the $1 Million Man for the $1 Million belt, because he had a. Oh, speaking of which, the next card I have is the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. His whole gimmick was that he was a $1 Million Man, all this kind of money, that you were beneath him, he was over you. And he would always do on a lot of episodes of WWF Superstars, after his match, not only would he humiliate his opponent by sticking a $100 bill into the dude's mouth when because he used to put him to sleep. That was his signature move, was the $1 Million Dream. But he also would do like segments before he even started the match, where he would come and bring some little kid out of the crowd and says, "Hey, if you can bounce a ball 10 times without dropping it or missing it, I will give you $100. And so the kid would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then he would kick the ball right out of the kid's hand, and he didn't get it. So he goes, and then he would tell the kid to go out. So there was a lot of hate going on to him a lot of times. So with the $1 Million Man, even though he didn't win, so spoiler, but it was him versus the Macho Man Randy Savage at the main event, the final match of the tournament at WrestleMania 4. That was a good match. The next guy actually is from upstate New York, where I live, in Glens Falls, New York. I'm talking about Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He was always, bleeds red, white, and blue. Was very patriotic. Former football player. Always carried around a 2x4. And if I would have to, suggest a match for him, it was always a good guy. There weren't a lot of like single matches he did. He did a lot of matches like on Superstar, but not a lot of like high profile matches with him. I would say I would recommend it was an 8-man tag with him, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Sergeant Slaughter, Virgil, and the Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 8. It's an 8-man tag. The next card, we're getting into the nitty gritty here. She was a manager and was the most beautiful lady I've seen in wrestling, other than like any other lady wrestler. She wasn't a wrestler, she was a manager. I'm talking about Miss Elizabeth. She used to be the manager of Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan when they were the Mega Powers before they split up. And she was, she also managed Lex Luger and she went to WCW. But she had, unfortunately passed at a very early age in Atlanta, Georgia. Rest in peace. But the next card I have, this was just like their logo for the wrestler, is Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and his gimmick was that he was a barber. He used to bring like some hedge clippers, you can see on the card, and then that's what he would do. And the last card of the this particular pack, the most biggest spectacle of wrestling ever, in the early 60s all the way up to the 90s before he passed. And I mentioned them as one of my favorite or the best Hulk Hogan match. Andre the Giant. This dude, you did not want to mess with him. There was a documentary on him on HBO. Go check that out. And of course, he had so many great matches with Jake the Snake Roberts, Hulk Hogan. Let me see, who else did he have? Big John Studd. So if it wasn't the match with Hulk Hogan that I would recommend, the match he had with Big John Studd at WrestleMania 1, I would definitely check that out. So that does it for this episode of Pick a Card. This is JD saying to you, please like and subscribe. And of course, if you want to comment, please comment on any of the submissions on our Facebook page, our Instagram, or Twitter, because they don't allow you to comment on the actual video on YouTube because of the COPPA law. So definitely check it out, and be sure to also watch out for the giveaway. Once we reach 65 subscribers, we will be doing another giveaway. So if you like, subscribe, and comment, you will then be entered in. We're currently at 60 subscribers. Thank you so very much, and keep on cruising, brother. Que onda si pecho arriba, las manos, caballo moreno, penetra tu